The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at WrestlingWithJohners.com. Hello and welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Johners Live, episode 291. And I've got two amazing guests for a Monday evening. It is still Monday, isn't it? But Monday evening, and I've got none other than the United Wrestling Tag Team Champions, the UBW Tag Team Champions, Adonis, Payne and Artemis. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of Wrestling with Johners. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Yeah. Good, thank you.
It's going to be a really, really fun conversation over the next hour or so with one of the brightest and one of the best and one of the most decorated tag teams in UK wrestling right now. And we'll get into all of that. We'll talk about their journey in the wrestling business, talk about what they're up to and what the future holds. But first of all, I'm going to bring up some pictures and kind of just to demonstrate. Look at some of the gold there, guys. UBW tag straps, United Wrestling tag straps. On top of the world there as part of the meme team, and like I say, loving every minute, and there you are for United. But thinking about the last 12 months, guys, and the journey that you two have been on, just in a nutshell, the things you've done singles and in tag team work, and where you are now, and of course you're double champs. Could you believe, you know, at the beginning of 2022, how the year would end for you guys at the end of 2022? Just sum it up for us.
Surreal on my half. I would say the back end of 2021 to early 2022, business started picking up, but I didn't think that where I'm at now, the speed that, especially in tag wrestling with Artemis, where we've got to in such a short space of time has just been surreal. So enjoyable, but surreal.
Yeah, and for yourself, Artemis, a hell of a journey. Your first full year in the wrestling business, 2022. Sum it up for me. That must have been a crazy journey for you, and one that you have to kind of pinch yourself on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. It's obviously I debuted right at the end of 2021. So yeah, just over a year in. We've been tagging since about July, I think. It was one of those things where we'd sort of discussed it, it happened, and then it was like, well, this is it now, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I introduced you as, one of the most decorated tag team champions in the UK. And I don't think there's many tag teams that I can really think of off the top of my head that have got more than one set of tag gold, and you've got the two there. But I mean, Artemis, I'm going to throw it over to you. And like I say, you've just completed your first full year in the business. You debuted, I think, in December 2021. And here you are, early 2023, less than a year and a half later, just over a year. Like I say, your rise in the business, your rise in UBW and various other promotions. How are you feeling kind of, 12 months in, or just a bit more than 12 months in, and being double champs?
Honestly, very grateful. It's been very whirlwind. Sort of taking the opportunities as they come, I think, for both of us. And it just gathering momentum, and it's been a bit unprecedented, I think. Like, I had no idea that would be the case for myself, and then obviously for us as a tag team as well. I think the way we always talk about it is it's one of these things where we tag and we sort of go in and we're like, let's see what happens, and things just seem to go really well.
Yeah.
I think that's our attitude to it. It's been great though. It's been a real joy as well tagging with Adonis.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will take a deep dive into all of that. But we are live. And for anybody watching or listening at home, want to get in touch with the show, want to get in touch with the Odyssey, with Adonis, Payne and Artemis, you can do. Just send your questions through to us using your chosen device. They'll ping through to us, and we'll do our very best to answer them all live during the course of this interview. And I've had a few questions come through already, so we will bring them up at the appropriate time. But Adonis, now, like I say, I've been following your career fairly closely, certainly over the last 12 months or so. And I think I first saw you at a Sacrifice Pro show back last February when it was UBW versus Sacrifice Pro. That was a great show. I think you were part of UBW that night. And then the next time that we had a chance to speak was at the 18 plus show for Sacrifice Pro. Is it emoji? Aubergine. Now, what a crazy night that was. And we talk about another crazy night a bit later on. I think you can probably get what I'm referring to, but emoji. And after that match, you had a match with Payne. Loser must lose their last name, or however it went. But we spoke after the match, and we did a little interview. But after that, we kind of just spoke off camera about kind of where you were and how you were, feeling about the business and feeling about kind of where you were in the wrestling business. And at the time, and this was about May, at the time, you felt a little bit directionless, a little bit unsure of kind of what the future might hold, probably on a little bit of a downer. When you kind of compare how you were feeling back then, and this was only last May, to kind of where you are now, it's kind of a hell of a change, a world of change. What do you think was that catalyst, that spark that kind of took you from where you were, feeling a little bit, demoralized, a bit demotivated, and a little bit directionless, through to kind of, the upswing, so to speak? What do you think was that transition?
Yeah, I think just to clarify, I think the demoralization wasn't necessarily to do with the business itself. The business has always been great to me. The people that I've surrounded myself with have always been amazing. It was more personal life struggles that I was going through, and it was just a lot was picking up. And obviously weight was very below par. Like, I was very below weight, not eating properly, not living properly. So I think the catalyst was support from a lot of my peers was a big one. And I think as well, just finally getting a hold of myself and almost not pulling myself together. I think that's the wrong words, but giving myself, if I want to take opportunities and if I want to make something out of the business itself and just to be happier in myself, I needed to really get to grips with life in general. That took a few months or so. I ended up moving home, moving closer to where I am now, which is sort of Buckingham, Milton Keynes way. And just life ended up getting a lot better. I was able to get myself into a routine and just being a lot happier in general. And then alongside that, the business was very kind to me. Me and Artemis started tagging. We were getting opportunities. I was pretty much, now I'm spending life on the road with one of my closest friends. So I went from almost doing everything alone and not really having people around me, because I lived down in Winchester, which was quite far away from UBW where I was working mainly, to being around the corner, surrounded and seeing all of my friends on a weekly basis, if not more than that, sometimes spending whole weekends, and everything just picked up. I think moving home has probably been the main catalyst to that.
Yeah, 100%. And I would say that possibly as a coincidence, kind of teaming up with Artemis around that time, joining the meme team, that kind of gave you a bit more focus, a bit more direction, a bit more character work to get your teeth into, which probably was a little bit more of an uplift for you as well. Yeah,
I think it was a massively different dynamic. Ever since I started, the whole thing that I was being pushed towards and what I wanted to do was always singles wrestling. I never even considered tag team wrestling. It wasn't in my head anywhere to be seen. And it was one brisk conversation that me and Artemis had. Coincidentally, it was my first Square One Championship defense, Artemis's debut match against Tommy Kyle that day. And we somehow just got talking about Greek mythology, Greek names, and how potentially we should do a tag team in the future. And that was almost so in seeds, but I think both of us at that time were going, maybe, we'll see, and never thought anything of it. And, now I look at tag team wrestling, I wouldn't want to do anything else. I go to shows if I'm doing singles wrestling going, I could have so much fun if I could be working with Artemis, and it's just so much. I get to bounce off of other people. There's a lot more moving parts. I just find it so enjoyable. And I don't think I would have ever thought that would have been the case before COVID when I first started training, or even on those first few months leading up to starting the meme team.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it was just a fun dynamic. You've got Memes, who's such a brash, overconfident character, especially doing the heel work. He's so hated but wants to be loved. And then you've got Artemis, who's just a big, strong villain. Facial expressions are all there, real big powerhouse. And my job was just to be the arrogant young blood that was almost kind of Memes' shadow to a certain degree. And it was just so much fun. It was just a great dynamic to be a part of.
Yeah, and we will get into that dynamic and that chemistry between the two of you and the three of you, including Memes. But one other thing, just sticking with Adonis for a second, another thing that's a noticeable change is the physique. And I'm not to embarrass you, but I'm going to bring up a before and an after picture. And we spoke about this before going live, and those photos are probably 12 months apart roughly, and the difference in terms of just the size and just kind of the way you're holding yourself there is fantastic. You could definitely see in that picture there the gain. But what's gone into that? I know you mentioned earlier that you moved home, you're getting into a routine. That certainly helped. But I'm guessing there is a lot more work that's gone in terms of maybe your nutrition, or maybe your work inside of a gym, or just taking certain things with a slightly different, more focus. But what went into that? And like I say, 12 months is not a long time.
Yeah, and to be fair, I didn't rush myself into it either. It started off with working out maybe 3-4 times a week, but I still hadn't got the diet right. And then it turned into using a proper gym instead of a home gym. And again, diet still wasn't there. And I think it was December of last year to January this year, I decided to really start going on my diet, eating clean. I take a lot of advice from people that I can speak to that have got a lot more knowledge in that area. Artemis being one of them, who wisely told me the other day not to take a fat burner and a pre-workout together, but I went against her wishes and struggled in the gym massively. So maybe I don't listen as well as I should. But I just decided that start of this year, I was really going to get on my diet. I look at some of the physiques that are around wrestling, and then I kept on looking at old pictures of myself, especially when I was very underweight and you could noticeably see my ribs and things like that. It was one of those ones where I wanted to get to that stage. And, by no means the finished product. It's very much the beginning. But I'm just enjoying my life now. The gym's become a routine every day. Monday to Friday, I'll go to the gym sort of 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. I'll eat 4 or 5 meals a day. It was eating a hell of a lot of calories, but it's all worth it.
Yeah, and Artemis, I'm going to ask you a similar question, because Adonis described you as the powerhouse, extremely strong, great physique. What's your kind of routine as far as nutrition and training is concerned outside of the ring?
I mean, I was going to say he's sort of ruining that dynamic now. He's bulking up, it's catching up to me. I started going to the gym quite a few years back now, about 8-9 years ago or something. I started going to the gym when I got in my shoot life, my first office job. So I went from being on my feet all day to sitting at a desk all day, and I realized you start putting weight on when you're just eating chips and not moving. Who knew? So I started doing classes and stuff, and then progressed to just doing weights and things. And nowadays I've sort of got a plan that's sort of built around powerlifting and bodybuilding, kind of a mix of the both. And I've also signed up for a strongman competition in September, actually. So doing a bit more targeted training for that as well now. Nutrition wise, I'm currently trying to lean down a little bit. So opposite of Adonis. So calories are sort of going down a little bit. I'm actually working with Cy Gregory on that. So shout out to him, because he's been a massive help, just giving me a bit of accountability as much as anything. But yeah, I sort of follow. My other half's really into fitness as well, so he's like a really good person to bounce things off of. He knows a lot of stuff, so he knows his macros and stuff like that. But yeah, nutrition wise, it's macro counting and getting your protein in.
Yeah, I just want to stick with 2022 for a little bit longer, and like I say, just to break it down a little bit, you've both made incredible debuts for various companies around the country, and we'll talk about some of those, having some great outings both in singles and, of course, tag team matches, winning the UBW Tag Team Gold, which we'll talk about very, very soon. Tons of recognition going your way, but all down to the hard work that you put in and taking advantage of every opportunity that's come your way. I'm going to bring up some pictures here, and the end of year awards at UBW kind of sums it up. And Adonis being voted alongside Leo Edwards there, match of the year. There you are, tag team of the year for 2022 for UBW, and champions of the year for UBW 2022, the Odyssey. And I think this was possibly a snapshot of the match of the year with Adonis Payne versus Leo Edwards. That, if I'm not mistaken, is a pretty impressive coast to coast there. And I think that's proper kind of Shane McMahon, Vince McMahon style there with the trash can. But tell us a bit about some of them awards and the recognition and the acknowledgement that you two received at the end of the year. And like I say, to top it all off, tag team champions of UBW and quite a few end of year awards. That must have been the icing on the cake to a pretty successful year. Tell us about it.
Yeah, there's not really any words. I mean, the UBW awards went on social media, so it's not just recognition from fans, it's your peers. So I think for us, it means a lot, especially when you consider, I think we both agree that champions of the year might be false. I think Truman Roswell should have had that. He had that belt and ran with it for so long. But we'll take it. We had the belts for probably 2 months, and the people decided, that we got champs of the year. But tag team of the year, when you consider the tag teams that were in UBW for 2022, Westside Heat, who we danced with twice, it's another surreal moment. It's something that I wouldn't have considered being possible. We just worked well together from the first tag team match, and we just seemed to bounce well off each other. And I think a testament of how well that is down to Paul Ash. I think that's definitely, he's played a massive role from turning up at his training sessions at Square One and asking him for advice and how we can improve and what moves we could do that would look good for the pair of us. And he's just a bucket of knowledge that you could just pick from all day. And he's always happy to take the time out, message you even out of face-to-face chats. It's just been brilliant. But yeah, it's just speechless how we've been given those awards, I think.
Yeah, and Artemis, similar question. Did you expect to be walking away with any awards come the end of your first full year in the business, let alone champions of the year, tag team of the year? Some pretty good accolades there.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, I think we're probably still astounded that we got the belts in the first place. I always sort of talk about the day that we won the belts, and it sort of didn't really sink in. I almost wasn't celebrating because I was just expecting Paul to come out and be like, no, there's been a terrible mistake. You're not actually meant to have them. Unless he changed his mind. But fortunately for us, he didn't. But yeah, it's been mad, to be honest. It's the fans at UBW as well are so good, and they're really good to us. They've been really good to us as well. So it was really unexpected, but really nice as well. And just on the match of the year as well, Adonis and Leo, they really built a storyline. That I think that's why that match was so good. The match itself was good, but it was the pinnacle of a long storyline that they'd both worked on and built up. And I had a brief appearance in that match, got taken out by Ben.
Yeah, that match was
in that coast to coast shot.
Tell us about that match then, because like I say, obviously voted match of the year, and that was a Square One Academy show, wasn't it? So tell us a bit about it and what you remember of it.
So I think me and Leo, when we started the storyline we wanted to end on a high note. We wanted to build it to where it had to be something we could throw the book at. It was a bucket list job. So you can see that with some of this stuff. It was a spot fest. I wouldn't say there was a lot of wrestling in there. It was weapons. It was, in the end, blood, because we did a jump with a skateboard from the top rope and that went wrong and hit the back of my head. So after about 4 minutes, I was bleeding from the back of my head, which didn't go down too well at a family show, but we managed to keep going.
Yeah.
I spent £30 on a bin because I wanted my Shane McMahon moment and got a bit of payback on Leo because that hit him in the unmentionables. So it was just a car crash of a match, but it was just wonderfully pieced together. We were speaking about it for 3 weeks, I think it was, before that match actually took place. And by the end of it, we were both just so happy with it, with the footage that came out. And it was worth everything that we did. It was the highlight of a story. Leo goes out on a high note. He's overcome me, who I had a very, very strong reign as Square One champion. I was pushed very highly. Some of the matches that I had with that belt were just fantastic. So I think for Leo to win it in that way, it was something that I wanted to do with him. I think he needed that moment. And even though we put our bodies on the line, I think my favorite moment from that match is the footage of Artemis being hit with the bin. I knock out the referee, being the evil villain. I bring out my tag team partner to put on a referee's shirt and make the count. And as soon as she turns around to go and count a pin, Leo's there with the bin and just clonks her on the head. And it is the most perfect moment. And it still makes me laugh now.
I still randomly get sent that clip.
Oh, brilliant. And focusing on more recent times, and I think one match that you'll probably never forget is one of your more recent ones, but of course we're talking about WrestleMania, goes Biggles Wade, and here's the show poster, and this is the match that I'm referring to. There you are, the Odyssey, going up against Charles Crowley and Alexis Falcon, two of the biggest names in the UK. Crowley, of course, has just exploded absolutely everywhere, going international as well recently. And there's a little picture, I think, of you doing your amazing elbow on Crowley, if I'm not mistaken. But that brings us to our first listener question. Now, let me just cue it up here. So this is from a friend of the show, fan of yours, Ashley Clements. Would you say that facing Alexis Falcon and Crowley at WrestleMania 5 has been your biggest test so far? So take us back to that. I mean, first of all, tell us about when it was first announced to you that you were going to be facing Crowley and Alexis with the gold on the line, because that must have been a bit of a thrill in itself. And then tell us a bit about, answer Ashley's question, and tell us a bit about what it was like. Were they possibly your biggest tests so far? But how you found out about the match to start off with?
So, I mean, it all goes back to a Riot Cabaret show that we were ring crewing on, really. That was the start. It was their last Riot Cabaret show where Mr. Blobby got involved. Me and Artemis has stood at ringside, having done ring crew, waiting to help out in any way that we can. And Charles and Alexis make their entrance in the Battle Royal, and we're stood manifesting a tag match together. We're sat there going, I think we could work with them. Obviously, we've known Charles for a while now. I think your first match on UBW was tagging with Charles. My first match after COVID was against Charles in a tag match. So we've been around him for a long time, and it just so happened that we manifested something into reality, because the day after, Charles said, look, I've got WrestleMania free in my diary. I'm not at UBW so often. Can I work with you too? Can I bring Alexis? And it just all managed to piece together. And I even think, for me personally, up until the week before, a few days before, I was still thinking there's a chance for this to change, with how busy everybody is. There was bugs flying around at that point. And, I think I was just waiting because I just anticipated that match so highly in my head. That was, it answers Ashley's question already. Yeah, it was a massive test. It was probably my favorite match I've had so far, up there with maybe one other. But it was just incredible.
Yeah, and Artemis facing Charles Crowley and Alexis Falcon, probably two bucket list opponents for yourself. Certainly in your first full year, maybe you didn't think that you'd be facing opponents to the caliber of those two in your first full year, but you did as tag team champions alongside Adonis. And of course, I say first full year. This was only a couple of weeks ago, I think earlier this month, if I'm not mistaken. But your reaction when you're kind of in there with the likes of Charles Crowley and Alexis Falcon, like I say, you must have enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah, it was honestly a great fun match, the actual match itself. Like Adonis said, in the run up to it, I think I'd been under the weather the week leading up to it, and I was doing everything I could to stave off the bug that was trying to take me down. And I think even Charles on the day was slightly under the weather. It was like all these things where you sort of waiting for something to go wrong and it to not happen. And then it got announced that it was going to be the main event as well, which for both of us at a UBW show, that's our first main event. And I think it's also the first time a straight tag match has been the main event at UBW as well, which is mad. And to be part of that is a real privilege. But yeah, both of them are they're really creatively minded, the pair of them. I think it was interesting for them to come back into a family show environment after their exploits at TNT. So they had to be a bit creative, although there was a moment, I think, in the match where they landed in a questionable position, and I had to protect Adonis's from such please. But yeah, the match itself, honestly is absolutely a career highlight for me. Even despite the concussion, I did sustain a concussion midway through the match. Finished the match and have been suffering a little bit since, but still a career highlight. Absolutely.
Yeah. And when you talk about stars like Charles Crowley, and of course he's a UPW original, that's where he kind of cut his teeth, that's where he started, and that's when he started in the ring. And like I say, Charles Crowley and Bobby Tyler as well, Stevie Turner over in NXT WWE, and you kind of look at the legacy of UBW and over the last, I think it celebrates its 10th year this year, which is absolutely phenomenal, and has trained some of the best pros in the UK, some very well-known names. But looking at those two in particular and some of the other stars that UBW have created, that must be a huge motivational factor when you look at them, kind of how they started, and then what they've gone on to do, and how people like Paul Ash and Tommy Kyle, they mold and they develop these individuals to the point where they're prepared to take on the world, where they're able to take on the world. That must be a huge motivational factor for the two of you and for all the other guys and girls at UBW Square One.
Yeah, I think seeing Bobby now over in the US, and obviously Charles taken over the UK and in Canada, and seeing the legacy they're leaving. Obviously Tommy Kyle, injury aside at the moment, but he was really starting to make waves in the UK as well just before. And I think that as a legacy of UBW is incredible, and it does give you something that you can aspire to. It shows that it's doable. It's somebody that's been in your position is getting out there, getting those opportunities, and it's not just by luck. They've earned those opportunities. But again, a big credit to Paul Ash, because his brain, bless it, as scrambled as it can be sometimes, is really wrestling. He thinks in wrestling. So it's like if you've got something you're trying to work on or something you've got an idea for, he can take it and mold it and get you where it needs to be. Yeah.
And for yourself, Adonis, I mean, you saw the likes of Charles and Bobby kind of come up through the ranks and through UBW. It must have been a thrill to see where they've got to over the last few years. And for yourself, as a up and coming performer, been in the business for a few years, that must be huge for you as well.
Yeah, I think going back pre-COVID when I just started, and was very, very new, Charles was the main champion there. Bobby had just come back, and it was one of Charles' defenses. So when you look at it now, it's even Tommy Kyle, Truman Roswell, where they're getting to. It's just incredible to see that people that you grow so close with that have had such a factor in your development as well. Even up until a few months ago, before Bobby went out to America, she was always around the academy, always training, always there to help you answer questions, train, pick her brain. Charles the same. I'll get a message from him on a monthly basis, if not more than that, just to ask how I'm doing. It's not just the fact that you can look to them and follow their footsteps. It's that it's a very family environment and everybody cares for you as if your career is a part of theirs too. I think we're very
momentarily lost Adonis Payne there. There we go. You're back in the room.
That confused me then. I think it was just one of those ones where everything's a family at UBW. So it's not just looking up towards them. It's the fact that they do care about your career too. And I'll always speak to Tommy Kyle, Truman Roswell, even like I said, on a couple monthly basis, couple weekly basis. Charles Crowley will drop me a message and just offer advice, even if it's something so minor. It just helps. And I think that's one of the main things that I love about Square One and UBW the most, is how close everybody is. There's no egos there. There's no, well, I've been doing this 5-6 years and you've only just come through. It's they want to bring you up, not keep you down there, because ultimately if the industry's stronger, UBW's stronger, and it just benefits everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think as well, just as a follow on, it's been quite nice. Obviously, we're sort of starting to be in a position where we can support people coming through the school now as well. And it's like being able to sort of almost be what they are to us to somebody else as well, and give some newer people opportunities and figure out ways to support them as well and get them onto shows. And I think that's, for me, it's like people have been really good to myself, to both of us, and it's put me in a real mind of wanting to pass that on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because obviously the newer crop of who look up to you guys now that you're branching out and going to various promotions around the UK and having so much success. A few people that have reached out to us now, we've had a ton of questions come through, but if you're watching us via Facebook Live, please, I urge you to go to streamyard.com/Facebook, and then we can see your name and your picture icon up on screen. But a few of these will come up just as Facebook user. But this one here, first of all, Adonis, your tan has improved significantly of late. What's your secret? So I can't imagine it's a hell of a lot sunnier where you are compared to anywhere else in the UK. So what is your secret?
I don't know. The sun shines a bit brighter in Milton Keynes.
It must do. It must do. But we'll leave that one there. And somebody that you both know very well, and a good friend of mine, George Booker. Adonis, predictions for Oldham versus Southend next month.
Oh, don't start. I reckon 4-0 Southend at this rate. But actually, to be fair, the way we're playing, it's probably bound to be a draw. But no, Oldham's a sore subject at the minute, Jonas.
I'm sure. But George, thank you for reaching out, and like I say, a great content creator, a great podcaster.
He's
you
done
both
that
know that for sure.
He's as an Arsenal fan at the minute. He's picking holes.
I want to switch subjects a little bit and talk a little bit about, now let's just bring up the pictures here, United Wrestling and new tag team champions, the Meme Team, or the Odyssey. And I think this was possibly the match where you won the championships. And there you are with the gold, with the championships, beautiful looking tag belts. And there you are in all of your glory. And of course, enjoying yourself in a United Wrestling ring, looking very relaxed and confident there as the new champions. But that's another promotion. We spoke about UBW at length, but United Wrestling, I think you both started wrestling for them maybe about early summertime, May, June last year. another company that's very close to your heart as well. And tell us a bit about the journey that you've been on with United Wrestling, how you first got involved with them, all the way through to picking up the tag straps last month, I believe. So a great journey, and they're another company that's treated you very well and given you some good opportunities.
Yeah, I think it was one of their shows a few months before the May one. I want to say it might have been March or the February. Memes had just messaged the pair of us and said, can either of you come up and help at this show? We can try and get the meme team started there. They're really up for it, and help out and film the show. And I was free that day. I don't think Artemis was, so I went up and filmed it. And Mike Baker was one of the key promoters behind getting me back involved and getting me on the talent side of things. So I had a singles match with Harry Sefton, which Artemis was at ringside for. And then after that, we tagged on every single show, which ultimately led to us getting the tag belts. But that's another promotion which they've always been amazing with us. It's the guys that run it, the three guys that run it are just so nice. They're so happy to take on your ideas. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, they'll appreciate your ideas and they might use them later down the line, but they'll never shut you down and go, no, this is my company. They're always open. It's very much an open door policy there. And they were really, I would say, the first, beyond Sacrifice for me, the first promotion that I branched out to. And it made me a lot more confident with the rest of the scene, because there has been some horror stories in the past that you hear about when you branch out to different locker rooms and different promotions. And I think, fortunately, around the scene today, there's not much of that anymore. But UBW, as I said before, has always been a family place. So for us as one big family locker room, you didn't want to go elsewhere and see anything different. And with United, it was just the same. And fortunately for myself, I've never experienced a bad locker room environment wherever I've gone. Maybe that's luck of the draw. Maybe that's just the way it is now, which is either way, it's for the better. But United was just fantastic, and it definitely holds a very strong place in my heart for my career and everything that they've done for us.
Yeah, and Artemis, the same question. And like I say, not only are they giving you opportunities as a tag team, obviously you're the tag team champions, but giving you one or two opportunities in singles competitions. So like I say, they're really opening the door for the both of you. And give us your perspective on how things have gone so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, sort of echoing what Adonis said, I think just grateful to the guys over there running the promotion that they've been so welcoming of us. Certainly, like myself, I think my first time there, I'd barely done any shows. I'd had only a few matches under my belt, and that might be one of the first places we tagged together, actually.
Yeah, I think it was like our second or third tag match when we had it.
So it's like they've taken a chance on us, you know, that being so new in and still very green, and that we're going to deliver. And I think it's been a pleasure to be able to grow there as well. As a tag team, we have an interesting following at United where people do boo us, but then there's a few people that still love the meme team over there, and it's a real good crowd. And the shows they're really good. The venue, especially now, it creates a really good atmosphere. So every show you just get a real good crowd, real good atmosphere, and the locker room is always so good. And there's always experience there as well that you can pick people's brains and get feedback. So it was obviously a bit of a surprise to be given the United belts as well. And again, it's just grateful that they're giving us the opportunity and taking a chance on us. Especially when we're so new in our careers, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think as well, just back on that match where we won the belts, you brought the graphic up earlier. That match itself for me is the only one that comes close, in my opinion, to the Charles Crowley and Alexis Falcon matches. They're my top two, and I wouldn't be able to pick my favorite one between Rex Armstrong and Harry. It was a double for a lot of people. So Ignite were running the show a few hours before, and you had Artemis, Kira Chimera, and Alexander Roth were all at Ignite. So two key parts to our match were not there. And it was, I think, around by the time doors opened, we needed to get a match planned. And Rex and Harry definitely took a hold and took the lead in terms of planning a match. And they were incredible with it. They put together what could have been a cluster of spots and terrible ideas and made it into what was a pretty good tornado triple threat tag in the end. And I think, I mean, I walked out the back going, good luck to anybody that's following that. And then Scotty Rourke and Kira Chimera went and stole the show. And I was thinking, never mind. But that it was just a tale of how good the show was from start to finish, really. And but that match is one of my favorites personally, especially with the caliber of guys that we got to work with.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the dynamic between the two of you, or maybe the three of you, including Memes, because I know this year in particular, it's been some interesting storylines going on, interesting dynamics, especially at Sacrifice Pro and UBW. And I've got a few pictures here from recent times where Memes is getting a little bit shovey there, a little bit heavy-handed. Artemis is not liking what's going on, and but fill us in here, guys. Fill us in here, because we've obviously spoken about what a fantastic tag team you are, and what great chemistry you have, what great dynamics you have between the two of you. But it's not all fun and games. It's not all roses in the Odyssey or the Meme team, is it? But I know there's been events that have happened this year at Sacrifice Pro and UBW. But fill us in. Where are we? Have you kind of patched up all of your differences?
The Meme team is on hiatus at UBW. I think we're Meme's got a bit too big for his boots there, quite frankly, and we wanted to go our own way there. But we've come to a truce with him so that we can continue to work with him at Sacrifice and at United as long as he behaves himself.
UKPW.
UKPW also, yes.
It's basically UBW. We're finished with the Meme team.
He just got too big for his boots there, Jonas. So we had to put him back in his place.
No, absolutely. But we've had a few questions come through about that. I'll have to have a quick skim through to see if I can find any. Don't know if you can answer this one. Who is Memes' favourite? Does Memes have a favourite?
Memes.
Just himself. There we go. Fantastic. But let's take a bit of a deep dive and starting with yourself, Artemis, and your love for pro wrestling and kind of where it all started. Have you always been a wrestling fan? Have you been a lifelong wrestling fan, or did you come into it fairly late in life? But tell us about your journey and your wrestling fandom in particular.
So I watched it when I was younger. Talking sort of late 90s, it was still WWF when I was first watching it. I have two older brothers, so when you've got two older brothers, you don't get to choose what's on the telly. So wrestling was usually what was on, and I enjoyed it then. But it was still a period where women in those matches they weren't wrestling, they were a gimmick, and they weren't respected, and I soon lost interest. And it wasn't till I'd say 2016, 17, something like that I got back into it. My partner watches a lot of wrestling, especially Japanese, New Japan, and that side of things. So I'd watched a bit with him, and I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And then we went to a Progress show in 2017. It was a themed 70s show. And I think the match that really sparked my interest back in wrestling fully was Nina Samuels against Isla Dawn. They were wrestling under different names on that show because it was a 70s themed one. But it was just like watching women actually wrestling like the men were wrestling, which I'd not seen before. Like all those years, like when I was watching when I was younger, that's not what women were doing with wrestling. And I was like, wow. And because Nina as well, she's muscly and she's like athletic, and it was just such a great the show itself was great, seeing all of it, but that was the match that sparked my interest again. And we started going to some Eve shows, as well as Progress. And then I got told about a Eve session that they were running. They had an academy, and they were running a free taster session to go along to learn to wrestle, and that's how I ended up back into doing it myself.
Yeah, and same question to yourself, Adonis, and kind of is it a similar journey, kind of watching WWF or WWE back in the day, and kind of developing your fandom from there? But tell us about your journey as a wrestling fan and how it all came into your life.
Yeah, I think it's similar. I've got 2 older brothers as well, but I was definitely the more wrestling fan out of the 3 of us. I can't remember how I found it, how I started watching it. I just remember that growing up, it was football and wrestling, always. Saturday mornings, we're always watching SmackDown on the telly in the morning, going and watching the football. And it was just always a constant. It was a constant revolver around my life, from playing the games on the PlayStation. Just, it was always one of those things that I really wanted to do and really wanted to get into. But it was just knowing how. And I think Brit Rest and indie wrestling never really had my attention. It was all, my world was just WWE, because that's all you could watch at the time. There was no other companies. There was nothing big that was blowing up. And it took really training in wrestling for it to actually become a thing for me, that there was a whole indie scene. And I've missed out on loads not knowing that. You then end up sort of pointing at the TV going, oh, these guys have worked for places where I've been, or, I've seen those guys on the indie scene looking back now, and it's where they've got to. But it was definitely WWE was where it started.
Yeah, and sticking with yourself, Adonis, and am I right to assume that your first foray into wrestling training would have been at Square One with UBW? Because I think you made your debut in 2019, so it would have been around about then when you would have started your training. But how did that part of your journey develop? And am I right in thinking it was with UBW?
It was with Square One back April 2019, I think it was, which feels bizarre that we're coming up to 4 years. COVID really lost track of time there. But I just decided one day I was going to look for an academy, and the closest one to me at that point was Square One. It was in a village hall in Henlow, Sundays. So I managed to make it work around my old job. I was finishing work, going to train on a Sunday morning, because I was working nights back then. And then it just started. Booking one-to-ones was the first port of call. So I was doing one-to-ones with Hugo Bloom all the time. I think that was every week for a couple of months. And then I developed into the group sessions, started working with guys like David Grant, Jackson Hart, Leo Edwards, who are all still around today. And then, I got put onto the academy shows in the October, which was again at that same village hall where we were training. But it was nothing like the Square One shows we put on now. You were talking 30, 40 people. A lot of the main show guys were coming down to watch just to fill out the crowd. And where you look at where Square One's got to now, it was completely different. We've gone from training 1 day a week to having access to the facility all 7 days a week whenever we want to. Whether it's ring time, in classes 3 days a week as well, which again, if you went back to 2019, that's unheard of. It was very rare that you'd get more than one session on a Sunday. There was sometimes 2, but that was about it.
Yeah, and Artemis, how did you come across the UBW Academy, Square One, indie wrestling camps or indie wrestling schools aren't always easy to come across, but how did you find Square One, and how did you find your way into that camp?
Well, I knew of them from before I'd even started training it. I mentioned my other half. He's dabbled in wrestling training himself. He's back at it again now, and he used to train with UBW before Square One existed, back in the day. With a lot of the guys that now we've already mentioned, like Tommy Kyle and Truman Roswell. And then he stopped training probably around the same time that I started training, whether that's a coincidence, I'm not sure. So I was sort of aware of it, but at the time I wasn't too sure what the setup was, and getting information sometimes is not all that easy. And it was also like where I was at the time, where I'd started at Eve. Eve is obviously an all-female environment. And in terms of my own confidence and stuff, it was a much more comfortable place to start training for me at the time. It was very, very supportive environment. I mean, it was unfortunate because it was in London, in Bethnal Green. It wasn't the most convenient for me, so I couldn't go as regularly as I would have liked to. So the first year of training, so I started there in March 2019. And my first year of training was very erratic on and off, and sort of just as and when I could afford the train and to get down there and had time. And but I also wasn't necessarily looking to make anything of it. It was just an environment where I was making friends and having fun. And then obviously lockdown happened. And I don't know exactly when the Square One unit got set up as sort of in the way it is today, but that sort of coincided around the lockdown time, I feel like.
Yeah, I want to say it was just before lockdown.
So I was sort of aware then that had been set up, and the ring was up all the time, and it was a full-blown facility, and it was at the point where I'd have been a bit more confident to sort of go along. Lockdown happened, and I think that then opened up for ring time, like when restrictions eased and stuff like that. But I didn't feel confident to just go along and train by myself, and I didn't necessarily know anyone in the area that was training at the time. Like, I knew of people, but I didn't know them myself. So I kind of waited then until classes resumed, which would have been May or June, I think, in 2021, and started training under Tommy Kyle, and also under Sid Scala at Hustle as well, and training at Playfight as well sometimes with Cara Noir. So I think when I first got back into it, I was doing classes everywhere and anywhere that I could, and it was with the facility so close as well. I was like, oh, I can actually really commit to this now and maybe do something with it.
Yeah, and I mean, to you both, really. I mean, looking at the UBW facility, the Square One facility there that you both know very well, what's some of the most valuable and most important lessons you think you've learned since you've been there? Not necessarily in terms of, you know, the moves or the bumps or anything like that, but obviously you get to learn a lot about yourself in that sort of environment, and get to learn a lot about, you know, who you are as a person, and you grow as an individual. Have you had any particular kind of light bulb moments or life lessons since you've been training under that, especially with, you know, with Paul Ash and Tommy Kyle, and you know, the experience that they have and the expertise that are there? Any particular life lessons or light bulb moments that have really kind of surprised you during your time there?
I think for me, it's resilience is a big one. There's going to be things that you come across that you want to do and you can't get them for a little while. You try it, whether it's a move, or for me, like even just vaulting into the ring is still can be a challenge. And it's one of those things where again, in those lessons, I would be the only girl in a class of boys mainly, and I remember vaulting in the ring, and they were all so springy, and they all just found it so easy, and I was really struggling. And it was just that thing of like, you can't compare yourself to anyone else. You've just got to keep trying, and you've got to keep just working on yourself, and persisting. And some things will come, some things will always take work, and it's just understanding as well of like, what are my strengths, what is it that I want to do with this, and what is it that I should be focusing on. But then equally, there's also times where, okay, push yourself outside your comfort zone now. So recently it's been I think Adonis approached me in December. I was really unwell at the time, and I'm definitely blaming that state of mind for agreeing. But he was pitching a match that we were doing at Sacrifice, where he wanted to do the Dudley Boys gimmick because he's lost his name. So he was like, "How would you feel about doing this top rope move?" And now I don't go up to the top. And he's pitched it to me, and I'm really unwell, and I'm like, sure, I'll give it a try. Just like agreed to it. And then it was like, oh no, I've actually got to do this now. But like, it's a good thing. I've had to push myself outside of my comfort zone, and now I'm like going to Paul, like, okay, what can I do from the top rope? What can you make me do today? And it's like sometimes knowing when to push outside your comfort zone as well.
Yeah, and have you ever had to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, Adonis? And kind of, similar question, kind of light bulb moments and taking yourself to the limits, valuable life lessons. I'm sure you've gone through it all with UBW.
Yeah, I think confidence is the key one for me. Having confidence in yourself, to know what you are good at the same time as knowing what you're not so good at. And it's being able to sort of say yes and no to certain things for yourself, as to literally what Artemis said, as to what you can and can't do, and not feel bad if other people can do things that you can't. I think it's definitely something where you've got to play to your strengths, and things take time to learn. For me, I would definitely say confidence issues. I remember when we were coming out of lockdown, I got a message. I think I was sat at my brother's wedding, and I got a message from Paul Ash saying that I was going to be put into a match with Charles Crowley and CJ Carter teaming together against myself and Truman Roswell, which would have been my second match ever on a UBW card. Bearing in mind, we'd just gone into lockdown after I'd had one match on a pre-show. So I'd just had my debut, and that was going to be on the second show out of lockdown, and I was going to be a part of the first one. And my first response to him, and we talk about it all the time now and have a laugh, my first response to him was, have you got the right person here? Because I just didn't think that I should have been anywhere near those three guys on a UBW show. I thought it was going to be, in literal terms, back to square one, and sort of going back to the training facility and almost trying to claw back what the time that we'd missed. And he went, no, you'll either sink or swim. And I'm hoping you're going to swim. And it was one of those where every single time that he was telling me something was going to happen, like winning the square one title between Hugo Bloom and Paul, it was always, are you sure? And I can't remember the exact time when it was, but there was a moment where it was just people started telling me things, and I was going, instead of asking them, are you sure? Like, I'm that person. It was, okay, cool. And now my mentality is, I'm going to do the best I possibly can. And my mentality going into every match now is that I want to have match of the night. Of course, that doesn't happen on every show. It's physically impossible to do it. But as long as I can have the best match that I possibly can, and I can push myself, then I'm not going to disappoint any promoters, any fans, any opponents, or even Artemis tagging in there. So it was definitely just the confidence building side of things, which everybody at UBW has had a part to play in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's jump to some people that have been watching the show and have been sending in their questions and their comments. First of all, one half of Act 2, Jack Dodson, is watching live. Thank you, Jack. He's a weekly viewer of this podcast, loves to send in his comments. We love you, Jack, but he loves you guys, and of course. And then his name won't come up, but I've checked Facebook, and this is Tom Holiday asking how was Adonis's first leg day. So I don't know if this is a recent event that he's referring to, but add a bit of context here. And how was your first leg day?
So when I wasn't working out very much and I'd first started getting into putting my physical health better, I wasn't prioritizing leg day, and Tommy Kyle was the first person to get on my back about how important leg day was and how I needed it and how I'm an idiot for not doing it. So it's now just a constant thing where he keeps saying to me, it's all well and good that your upper body's growing, but your legs are still going to be tiny if you don't train them. So I don't think, even though now I do train my legs, he's still clearly holding it over me.
Yeah, and sticking with the fitness theme, we've got Andy Howarth, probably butchered that name. Apologies, Andy, watching us via Facebook. How did you get lats like? How does he get lats like you? So we spoke a little bit about nutrition and fitness earlier, but Andy is particularly interested in how to get lats like Artemis.
I don't think you can. So sorry, Andy. I don't.
Not possible. Not possible.
Heavy back days. Heavy back days.
But please continue sending your questions, whether they're fitness related or not, whether they're about leg day or lats. Keep sending in your questions, and let's see where we are. And Artemis, I want to jump to you because I think you touched on it earlier, but your first match, your debut match, was in a UBW Square One Academy match against Tommy Kyle. I mean, that must have been an interesting experience for you, a thrilling experience, but also quite a daunting experience, I should imagine, as well. Take us back to that day and how are you feeling kind of stepping through their ropes or even kind of behind the curtain? Because like I say, thrilling, exciting, but daunting all at the same time.
I mean, going back even before that, I remember Paul Ash saying, "Oh, we'll get you on a show before the end of the year." And like Adonis, I was like, "So what? Are you sure? Are you sure? What?" Paul Ash is a big fan of the sink or swim mentality. But yeah, it was obviously being against Tommy Kyle. It was kind of like, it was exciting. Obviously he was predominantly my trainer at the time as well, so it's a student teacher match. And it was that sort of thing of like one of the best, certainly up and coming in the country. But actually it was really reassuring that it was him as well, because obviously my first match, I didn't really know what to expect. All the training you go through, it's very different to actually doing a match in front of a crowd. And I was just thought, even if it goes catastrophically wrong and I forget everything and I screw up everything, I'm in a really safe pair of hands and he would get me through the match. So I was kind of like, again, I think I just have like this imposter syndrome. I just think it's not going to happen. So it's like in the run up to the actual show day, I don't think I got nervous because I was still sort of in a state of like, oh, it's going to be fine. It's not even going to happen. Like it's going to get cancelled, or like that sort of mentality. And then it got to show day and it was like, oh, it's going ahead. Okay. And we were beforehand talking through planning the match, felt like I knew what was going on and felt pretty good. And then it got to the point where behind the curtain waiting to go out, and then I'm like, oh my god I've got to go out now and do it. And it sort of dawns on you and the music plays and I'm like, oh, I've got to go out, I've got to do it. But I think that the worst bit for me was after I'd made my entrance, I had to wait for Tommy to make his entrance. And I was in the ring and I was just really aware of people were watching. And I was just like, I just want to wrestle now. I want to just get on with it. But the actual match was really good. And it was kind of surreal because I kind of forgot the crowd were there a bit. It was just focusing on what we were doing in the ring. And it was the odd thing where it was like people sort of booing me. And then I remember hitting a fisherman's and everyone was like, woo! And I remember just sort of catching random bits like that with the crowd. And I had no clue what they were thinking. And then I got back afterwards and it was just like, I suddenly realized I was really out of breath. I had not noticed at all until I got back behind the curtain again. I was like really out of breath. The adrenaline was pumping. My heart was racing. And the show was in the evening as well. So it's like I got home and got to bed and I was just wired. I did not sleep at all. But no, it's a really good experience. Really good.
Yeah. And another question that's come through now, his name won't come up, but this is from a certain Joshua Young. Who is your favourite tag team partner that isn't Artemis? Not a loaded question. So I'm guessing this is aimed at Adonis there. But Joshua, kind of sending a bit of a loaded question there. How would you like to answer that one?
Oh, well, I've got two because Josh Spicer, of course, the last match that I had. What a great tag team partner. But I think he's just going to slip second behind my first ever tag partner, Truman Roswell. Lucha Thursdays training partner. He's taught me everything I need to know, and Spicer's ego can just stay down a little bit for tonight, I think.
There we go. Thanks, Josh, for sending in your question. Now, the first time that I got to see that the two of you wrestle together, I believe, now correct me if I'm wrong, was actually your first match tagging together, and it was this one here against Westside Heat at UBW Field the Heat last July. Now, first question, am I right in thinking that that was officially the first time you two tagged together as the Odyssey?
I believe
Correct,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, and tell us about that, because obviously, you know, since then the chemistry has gone from strength to strength between the two of you and led to some fantastic success. But teaming together, did you have to kind of rehearse a lot or talk or plan quite a bit before you went out there, or was it fairly natural once you stepped through the ropes together?
I think we had one or two training sessions, didn't we? I think we had like one training session working on tag stuff, and then it was just like everything that we seem to do. It was, well, let's just wing it and see if it worked. And I think we were both out the back, weren't we, Artemis, after the match, going, did that really go as well as we thought it went, or are we just kind of riding a high? And I think it was about 5 people came up to us afterwards. I think Paul Ash, Tommy Kyle, there was a guy off the sound desk, Y2 Gray, the photographer, Memes, who was at ringside, all coming up to us going, that was really good. Have you guys tagged before? Nope. No, that was the first one. And ironically, you were injured in that match as well. That seems to be a common theme in our matches as well. An Artemis injury.
Yeah,
really fun match
on my wrist, so
you did look in a little bit of pain then, but and then shortly after you did pick up the UBW tag straps, of course, but that must have been a bit of a thrill, both having started your career with UBW, trained at Square One, and kind of gone through the system, so to speak, and then to finally pick up your, you know, I mean, it wasn't your first taste of gold, Adonis, because of course you were, I believe, the longest reigning Square One champion, but you know, to win tag gold in UBW, a company that's very, very close to your heart, that must have been a special moment to have finally pulled that off.
Yeah, it's still, even now, it's like, it's surreal that it's the case. It's like Adonis said, that was our first tag match against Westside Heat, and it just seemed to click. And then we kept tagging. You know, we had a couple of matches at United and some other places, and it was like, this seems to just really work. And then unfortunately, James Toner, one half of Westside Heat, ended up injuring himself, not through wrestling, but as most wrestling injuries, not through wrestling. And the opportunity came up for us to take the gold, and just absolutely surreal. And it's that thing of being given the opportunity and being so grateful that people are taking the chance on us. Yeah,
I think as well with the tag belts, for me, I think it was more special for that one because, as I said before, I never saw myself as a tag team wrestler. I never thought that was a path that I would go down. So to not only build a friendship through training, to then start working with one of your best friends, to then go on and achieve success with one of your best friends, it was just like this ladder that we were climbing, and it was a massively high moment, regardless of having had the Square One belt before. It was just it's a different story to just claiming a belt. I think it was just a catalyst of a number of things, and I think both on the day we were still thinking that it wasn't going to happen. But we got there in the end, and even since, there's been numerous plans of, well, you hold him for a little bit, and then we'll see where you're at, and then a few months will pass, and people are going, we can't take him off you now. You're on a roll, and it's just we keep on just defying the expectations that were initially set.
Yeah, 100%. I think your tag reign will last for quite a bit longer, but I do want to shine a little bit of a light on Memes, and there's a reason for this. And like I say, he's been very helpful and opened quite a few doors for me over the last couple of years. But I think, you know, besides being the leader of the meme team, he's also been a bit of a mentor to the two of you, and kind of offered a lot of wisdom and a lot of his guidance and knowledge, and helped you out along the way. So you know, like I say, Tom, or Memes, is a fantastic guy, but I think in or out of the wrestling ring. I think he's been a bit of a mentor to you two, for want of a better word as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think you go on.
Yeah, I mean, like memes. So my journey with UBW and certainly right at the beginning of my career, I had my match with Tommy Kyle. The following week, I tagged with Crowley on a charity show. And then it wasn't until February when I was tagged, Memes' surprise tag partner, that I was sort of back on a show again. So he's been there since very much the beginning. And because of the meme team, he's been at ringside for a lot of our matches as well. So he's there and he's seeing what's happening. So he's able to give feedback that he's seen. And sometimes it's kind of been a reassurance as well. If you've had feedback that you're not sure of, he kind of gives perspective on it as well, as to how seriously to take that feedback as well, which is also important. Just getting different perspectives on things that have gone on. And yeah, he has obviously provided us with opportunities. We've been wrestling down at UKPW and United, and those doors were opened because Memes was already wrestling there and was able to introduce us to those promoters. Yeah, Adonis, you got thoughts?
Yeah, I think Memes for me, it was a massive part as to how I broke from square one in the academy to getting onto UBW as quick as I did. In my first match, Memes was one of the UBW talent that came to watch just to fill the crowd out. And I didn't know who Memes was at this point. I obviously knew of the character Memes, but I can't remember why. But involved in this gauntlet match, I just started giving him a bit of mouth over the rope when I was in my match, just to kind of make myself feel comfortable. And little did I know, after telling him that he wouldn't do nothing and he couldn't step to me in the ring, it was Wrestling Memes that I was talking to, who was sat next to Chase Anthony at the time. And then a couple of weeks later, I get a message from Memes saying that I'm going to be put into the Floor is Lava Rumble match, which was happening 2 months later. Because just from that moment, he decided, let's give this guy a shot on UBW. That's what we need. We crowd interaction. It was really good. So from that, I got the spot in Lava, and then I think I was actually due to wrestle Memes at the show that got cancelled before COVID, which is a shame because I've not wrestled Memes yet, and he's definitely on the list. I've worked with him loads, but I've never faced him other than a 4-way actually at the Bizarre Wet Cake show.
We'll talk about that very shortly.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about that too much. But he's been a massive help. I think Artemis has just mentioned it. United, UKPW. I'm sure there's got to be more. Tidal's another one. The connections that he's got, and we're almost the first two people that he goes, I've got these guys that can travel with us, and they're very good workers. They'll work on your show, and he's the first person to pitch us to other promoters who'll go, okay, bring them along. Let's have a look. And then we put our foot in the door, and then it's down to us. But I genuinely don't think the Odyssey would have got as far if it wasn't for Memes. I think he plays a massive part in it.
Yeah, 100%. But really top guy. He's helped me out quite a bit as well. Some of the questions that have come through, we've got Wrestling Jeebus watching us live via YouTube. What's your dream tag team opponents? And keep up the incredible work, both of you. So do you have any I know that you're branching out, you're wrestling for various promotions across the UK now, but any tag teams that you have your eyesight set on or might be on the horizon, or even if they're not, maybe that you'd like to get in the ring with one day?
I think there's a couple for me on the scene. There's definitely Greedy Souls. They're unbelievable. I've seen them up close so many times, and I would love to get in and work with them. FSU, if we're shooting dream matches, is another one. But I think if we're keeping local, Act 2 seem to just be bypassing us. We work on so many shows together, especially at Sacrifice, and they just keep bypassing us.
Yeah, that'd be good. Any dream matches for yourself, I
was also going to mention Act 2 as a local one. I think tag wise in the UK, I can't not mention Sunshine Machine as a big. Would love to. I mean, they're such lovely guys, but would definitely love to tag against them if the opportunity came up.
Yeah. Right, let's get to it then. Let's talk about Wet Cake Pro. And I think any talent that I've had on this interview that was part of that show, I've had to bring it up. I've had to mention it. And such an incredible show. I hope it's not a one-off because I think it was in many people's kind of top 5 best wrestling shows of all of 2022. Totally unique, totally batshit crazy. So many highlights. I mean, for crying out loud, it's got a bridge as its champion. And, Truman Roswell wrestled an actual alien. But Adonis, you were there, or were you? I don't know, because you were part of Money in the Bank with, let's see, Tony Sin, Memes, Mia Cortez, and there was John Cena. Or was it yourself? But tell us about that. I mean, the reason why I want to bring this up is because, and I spoke to you about this backstage at UBW, either you're the biggest John Cena fan or you just a natural at mimicking wrestlers because the way you hit the ropes, the way you did the You Can't See Me and all of the famous John Cena moves, it was spot on to a T. And if you don't believe me, it's on YouTube. Go and check it out. But tell us about that. And John Cena, is he like your wrestling idol or something? That was pretty much perfect.
He's one of them. I think it goes down to what I was saying earlier. Throughout the whole of the Wet Cake and then the subsequent journey that I've had with Sacrifice, where I've not got a name, so I'm imitating other people up until Tommy Kyle last month or whenever it was. I do my research. I want to do it well, even though I can put on different gears, different clothes, and I can look nothing like them. But if I imitate them slightly well, there's that bit of believability factor in it, and I just wanted to make sure that I did John Cena justice. I think a name like that needed to be done justice, and it was just so much fun. The whole show from start to finish. I was almost gutted that I was on halfway through because I missed so many fun matches from being out the back instead of in the crowd. And at Sacrifice now, it's amazing out the back because they've managed to set up a live feed monitor. So if you are out the back, you can watch the show start to finish from the hard cam, and it's amazing. But they didn't have that at the time at Wet Cake. So I missed Elijah fucking off for a bit. I managed to see his return at the end of the night, which is still one of the greatest moments. I saw a stormtrooper and his helmet fall off, and somehow it was Tommy Kyle. There was Rey Mysterio, a baby Brock Lesnar, Stone Cold ET got his neck snapped. It was just bizarre from start to finish, but it was a wonderful bizarre. And I think it really went better than anybody thought it was going to. I think all of us out the back were thinking this is either going to go really well or absolutely terrible. And it went really well.
Yeah. And if there was any other wrestlers that you would want to mimic or imitate at a similar event, and I'll throw this open to Artemis as well. Have you got any kind of any wrestlers that you would like to portray in the ring at another show somewhere down the line?
I think I'll leave that to Adonis. He does it so well.
I think all I'm going to say is there's a few in the pipeline. There's a lot of Sacrifice shows left of this year, and the hunt for my name goes on, I suppose. You know, ideally next show I'd face Payne and I can try and get my name back, but it's lights out. It's a roulette show. I don't know who I'm going to face. And let's be honest, we don't know if Adonis is going to turn up. It could be anybody at this point. But yeah, there's a lot of options. There's a lot of gaps on the market, I suppose. There's a lot of wrestlers out there, especially on the indie scene, which is based off the last show. That's what I'm going towards now.
Yeah. And another question that came through Facebook user, I will try and find out who this is. How does Adonis feel about his mum wearing a Crowley t-shirt at WrestleMania 5? And who's his biggest fan? So you could probably guess who this is from. I will try and find out. But is that right that your mum was wearing a Crowley t-shirt during your match against Crowley and Alexis Vulcan?
No, I tell you, she was wearing 2 shirts. She had a meme team shirt on underneath. She's a glory hunter. She just wanted to see who was going to win, and then whatever shirt. She's a glory hunter. But it's not just wearing it at Mimi of 5. I walk downstairs into the kitchen, and she'll be wearing it in the kitchen. I can't get away from him. He's following me around everywhere. But no, do you know what? On that subject, my mum she went from wanting nothing to do with wrestling when I was growing up, absolutely nothing to do with it. Was never interested. It was always my dad that was taking us if we ever got tickets to a live show or watching it on the telly. Even he wasn't interested. And ever since I've become a part of the industry, they'll come down to nearly every show that they can come to. And now they're invested in the independent scene. So the independent scene has got some consistent fans that are supporting and promoting other wrestlers as well as myself. And, you know, they've just embraced the whole thing, and they know what it is. They turn up, they get involved, and they've been very supportive. So I leave her to wear whatever shirt she wants to. She did text me before that show and said, "What shirt should I wear?" And I said, "You know what, the floor is yours." So she bought both just in case.
Oh, that's brilliant. And a question I'm going to throw out to both of you. And obviously, you've had a fantastic last year and a bit, and your rise and your development has been phenomenal. And I've seen it with my own eyes. But are there any kind of proud moments, really, really proud moments that you've accomplished, that you've done or kind of been a part of over the last year and a bit? But I'm going to start with Artemis. Proud moments from the last year or so.
I think the big one that comes easiest to mind is that match 2 weeks ago, the tag match with Crowley and Alexis. It was a real moment, I think, for both of us, where it was obviously we were the main event, we were with 2 of the biggest in the UK, and we held our own as well. It wasn't, you know, that we were in there and we looked out of place, or and likewise with the championship match at United where we won the belts. It was tornado, triple threat, tag match, like so many moving parts with 2 experienced, you know, tag teams, 4 experienced guys, and the feedback we got is that we didn't look out of place, which when you've only been wrestling for a year or so is a huge compliment. And to be going sort of toe to toe with these guys that we respect so much and have been watching, and it's a real privilege to have been in the ring with them, but then a real honor to then have got such good feedback. And the show 2 weeks ago, especially, like when we got back to the locker room, the resounding support and positive feedback from everyone was so overwhelming. Like people would just come in to find us and like congratulate us on the match and saying it was a real good main event, like a proper main event match.
Yeah.
And that was a real like landmark moment. I think there's, you know, over the course of the year, there's little moments where you've had a match. Like for me, I had a match with someone and they forgot what was going on in the match quite early on. And I was able to take control and guide them through the match. And it was like, that was a real, like, it was never going to be the best match we've ever had, either of us. But again, it's a landmark moment where I've taken the lead. And that was like for me, I got back afterwards. It's like, oh my God, look at me grow. But yeah, I think it's little things. But I think that for me is the big standout the 2 weeks ago, that show.
And what about yourself, Adonis? Like I say, you've had many landmark moments, highlights, opportunities over the years. The last 12 months for yourself has been incredible. Any moments that you're particularly proud of that you will live with you forever?
Yeah, I think obviously everything that Artemis has just said is spot on in terms of a few weeks ago and United, especially with United being not our home promotion where we were developed. To be given a belt there is just a massive honor, because we're not a homegrown talent. It's not one of those they've plucked us out of the sky really and put us on a card, and they've just found belief in us. But I think a few things that I'm massively proud of was back end of last year in December, I was able to lead a match for the first time with a guy named All Chill Charlie. And I mean, I say lead, he doesn't need leading too much. He's a fantastic talent that's coming through. He's on April 1st, the show that's coming up too. So he's going to step onto a UBW show, which is great for him. But that was a real privilege to be given that opportunity to say, look, you're the experienced guy in this match now. And it was like, again, another one of them. Are you sure moments? Like, am I there yet? Do you think? But that was a real honor and a real privilege that I can almost now start helping out the guys that are on square one and start coming through. But I think another one is I'm proud of the fact that I'm now able to have fun in my matches. I'm not at that stress level anymore. I'm not behind the curtain nervously thinking about every single thing that's going to come and how I've got to deal with it and what happens if things go wrong. And I take it back to a couple of weeks ago at Sacrifice against Harrison Leon, who's one of our very close friends, and that was one of the most fun matches I've ever had. Because I went out there with the mindset of I'm literally just going to have fun here. Tommy Kyle was on commentary. I was dressed up as Tommy Kyle. It was against Harrison Leon, who the last time he was at Sacrifice before that show faced the actual Tommy Kyle. So it was just so many different clicking moments, and both of us just had so much fun with that match. And again, even last week, tagging with Josh Spicer, it was just fun. And I think that's what I'm most proud of, that there's no massive stress involved anymore. It's just I'm enjoying the industry that I'm working in.
Yeah, 100%. And like I say, absolutely fantastic what you're both doing and what you've achieved. Let's look at a couple of matches that we've got on the horizon. And the next UBW show, the Stotfold Slamboree, and that's April the 1st. You defend your tag team championships against the Armada, and that is Paul Hubris and Shauna Reed. Formidable opponents there, and that's going to be a really fun match and another title defense for you guys. Looking forward to that one.
Definitely, yeah.
Massively so.
I think that's going to be quite a different match from our last one, but it will just be good to. I was saying to someone yesterday that it's really nice. Obviously, we're an intergender tag team, and there's some places where that's still an issue. We can't go and tag at some promotions because they don't do intergender. And it's just a testament that it's like 2 matches on the bounce, and we've got another match that same weekend, and it's all against other intergender tag teams. And that for me is like it's nice and it's good to see, and it's good that it's becoming more normal, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. But give us your thoughts on that one. You must be looking forward to that one. And as Artemis said, another intergender team coming into UBW to try and take your championships away.
Yeah, massively. I think for us especially, we don't want to be considered an intergender tag team. We want to be a tag team. You know, we can compete against anybody, and it shouldn't be a question. But what I'm really looking forward, we've known Paul Hubris for a while now through UBW, so that'd be really fun to work with him. And of course, Shauna Reed that's coming over from the States. So it's a big match. It's a big test, and it's 2 tag teams with 2 great names now as well. The Odyssey against the Armada. It's like an old school war. It's brilliant.
100%. And then the following weekend, the following Sunday, we've got Artemis against Evie Madden back over at United Wrestling. Adonis Payne watching from the outside, hoping not to get involved in any action or take any bumps. But that's going to be a fun match for yourself. And once again, I mentioned earlier that United giving you lots of opportunities, both as a tag team and in singles competition. So that'll be a great match to look forward to. And Evie is a terrific wrestler. The locksmith, of course. Can't wait to see that one.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be my first singles match at United, actually. So I'm really looking forward to doing something different there, and sort of being able to sort of show what I can do in a singles match as well. And I was just really excited when they announced that it was Evie as well. We've faced each other once before in singles action, so I'm quite looking forward to the rematch. She's a lovely girl, but you know, going to beat her up. So you know, always
there we
looking
go.
forward to it.
It's going to be fun. But as we start to wind down this episode of Wrestling with Johners, episode 291, it's an opportunity for you to shout out any of your socials. So if any of my listeners or followers want to reach out to you, learn more about Adonis Payne, learn more about Artemis or the Odyssey collectively, do you have any socials where they can reach out, say hi, learn more about you guys, or maybe watch some of your footage or buy some of your merch? And I do have a very long ticker that's going to scroll along the bottom of the screen with all of your socials, starting with Artemis. But I'll hand it over to you guys.
Yeah, I'm mainly on Instagram, really. PW_Artemis. I do also have a Twitter, which I do use, which is Artemis_PW. I think the other way around. But yeah, reach out.
Yeah, I think the same for me. Instagram's at Adonis Payne PW, and then Twitter is just at Adonis_Payne. I use both quite frequently, and I probably spend more time on social media than I probably should, but here we are. That's life nowadays, isn't it?
It really is. And we did speak briefly before we went live about merch. Now, I know that you've got a T-shirt, the Odyssey T-shirt in the works. Give us some information about that. When will we likely see it available to buy?
So the idea is with the designer who did my last T-shirt, Hellfire Designs. He's fantastic, brilliant. He was the one that designed all the championship belts that are at United at the minute. He's one of the owners, I believe, as well, Craig. So one of the main guys there. He's helped me out before, and he's going to be helping us out with the design. We've thrown him an idea. We don't want to give too many spoilers away on that, but that should be soon, hopefully. And then we're going to get them ordered as soon as we get the design through, and they'll be up to sale.
Artemis, you do have a design that's out and available right now, don't you? Tell us a bit about that and where we can get it from.
Yeah, I do. So I currently don't have an online store, so you do have to come and watch me at a show, really, to come and buy it from the merch desk. But yeah, I got the designer, worked with the Terminator on Instagram. You can find her. She's helped me out with that design. And I absolutely love it, to be honest. But yeah, I need to get some more stock because I'm running out of large and extra large, I think. But yeah.
There we go. So if you want that T-shirt, you've got to go to the shows. You've got to see these guys in person, and you've got to go and say hi and buy a T-shirt. But just to kind of cap it all off, look at that shot there. And UBW Tag Team Champions, United Wrestling Tag Team Champions. What a fantastic team, a team for the future, very, very promising future. I'm very, very excited for what is in store for you two. And as if the last 12 months haven't been enough, I think the next 12 months, or certainly the rest of 2023, is going to be incredible. But Adonis Payne and Artemis, I want to thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you at the shows.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Jonas.
There we go. Take care.